Okay, on a Monday night, I went to see Hamlet with Benedict Cumberbatch at the Barbican Theatre, and it was, uh, I thought, a great production, actually. I'm not a Hamlet expert. I've read it a few times, I've seen it a few times, um, but I thought it was one of the clearest in terms of story. Um, and sometimes Shakespeare often, there are digressions, there are kind of moments when you kind of go, actually, what is going on here? And that's not just, people who don't know Shakespeare, it's people, sometimes the productions can be flabby or obscure, but this wasn't. This had a kind of clarity and a kind of straightness, which I rather liked. Um, but what's interesting is they do mess with the text at the beginning, and that's not because they once placed to be or not to be at the beginning, because that's now been moved back into the heart of the play. Um, but for those of you who know, in the standard productions, Hamlet doesn't turn up for quite a while. But here we see him right at the beginning, and we see him through the first 10 minutes of the play. And I think what really works nicely with this is that um, because we're aware of him, when Claudius starts talking about his mood, and when Polonius and Ophelia start talking about his mood, we're very aware we're really aware of these people having a lenses on someone, um, rather than kind of talking about him before he enters the play. Um, and I felt that really worked really well. But I genuinely believe they made the right decision early on in the production to put to be or not to be at the beginning, because I think for two reasons. One, I think there is a lack of balance, which I think would have been, it was right with that, and clearly the intuition to put it there, given the production, I think was right. And so I mean, I have a friend who saw it. Um, with to be honest, at the beginning, and thought it was great and worked. And she's seen many productions, um, but I felt, I mean, it was weird knowing it had been there. I started thinking, oh, it really would have been great. Obviously, if I hadn't only been there, I probably wouldn't have thought about it. I certainly wouldn't have thought put it there. But I also think it answers one textual issue, which is that the speech, to be or not to be, which essentially is about staying alive because we have no knowledge of death, um, doesn't make quite much sense once Hamlet's seen the ghost, because that obviously, unless we decide the ghost, of course, is subconscious. But let's say we maybe take it at face value and the ghost is is real, then all of a sudden, um, a certain aspect of death becomes clear to Hamlet. So he's actually more knowledgeable about the dimensions of death, or the possible dimensions of death, than anyone else, and therefore, so to put it at the beginning, make it make it that quintessential moment of hesitation, of introspection, of um, that works at the beginning. I think it works at the beginning as an overall philosophy for the play. And the other thing is it would be at the beginning of the play, it can be the moment of introspection, because one of the other things that's been criticised about this production is that that Hamlet's soliloquies are very much played to the auditorium. They're not internal. They're not sort of deeply internal um, ruminations. And I think that worked as well. I think actually there was a sort of paradoxical intimacy, talking to the audience, as it were, because you kind of felt he was talking directly to you. So he's not talking directly to himself. It's not what Harold Bloom calls a self overhearing that he's going through. It's what we that we're part of that, and I think that works as well, particularly well. But if you'd had that one moment of real introspection at the beginning, and then onto the play, I think that would have been a very strong balance between interiority and how he goes about his kind of philosophizing. Um, I think the standout performance for me was actually Polonius. He's often seen as a bit of a sort of bumbling fool and a sort of kind of court jester who's just sort of suffered in the court with all his ramblings, whereas actually he says quite a lot of wise things. And this player seemed to have real integrity and dignity and respect in the court. So he sort of had the kind of comic element to it, but he was clearly a decent, wise old man that the court valued, and I think that worked very well. No idea what they were thinking about the casting of the ghost, or why he was talking in a late 19th century Welsh accent. He sounded like a recording of William Gladstone that I once heard. That didn't feel that worked for me. But I think but just obviously quickly before I finish, Benedict Cumberbatch's performance, I don't think it was a starry performance. I don't think it was a particularly actorly performance. I think it was a very steady, thoughtful, interesting performance. I don't think it's going to be a great Hamlet of our time, but I think he has a natural stage presence. His voice projection is absolutely impeccable, and his there is genuine intelligent charisma there, and that's not something. And what he didn't do, which often a lot of people do, a lot of performers do, is take the antic disposition, right to fifth or sixth gear from the beginning, even before he says he's going to behave that way. This wasn't there. There was a kind of playfulness about his antic disposition, which I think worked, and his performance evolved, which I think also worked. So we became more aware of his intelligence and his thoughtfulness, and his questioning. That it was becoming richer and deeper as the play went on. I think the first it's in two halves. The first is about 2 hours long. I think it's spectacular. The set is fantastic. The performances are fantastic. The pacing, the structure, everything they do. They cut probably a little too much, but the second half. I mean, I would have done it straight through without an intermission. It felt it needed that. The second half is slightly problematic in the play anyway, and I was slightly left kind of watching and waiting for the resolve, rather than feeling I was directly involved with the action. But on the other hand, but I think I think there's many good things about it, and I found myself properly engaged, and emotionally engaged without thinking particularly about what was going on. So it really kind of grabbed me and took me, and to the interval. And the interval, I was like, I absolutely love this. I don't even want to talk about it until the end because I have so much to say, and that's it. So. Not that I'm about to ever give stars for things, but I would say out of 5, this would have. Well, it's just I'm not going to give stars, so I'm not going to. But I hope that was interesting. Thank you very much. Goodbye.